Okay. Well, welcome everybody to International Chapter Graduate Women in Science. Today we're going to be discussing teaching and mentoring in science, and this is part 2. So this is a continuation of conversations that we had back in February and January of 2021, which will also be on our YouTube channel here. So first, we're going to have Chloe Lau, and she's from the Western Ontario University in Canada. So Chloe, thank you.
Thank you for the introduction. Hi, everyone. My name is Chloe, and I'm from the University of Western Ontario in Canada. I just had a short piece to share today about just the value of mentorship and the importance of mentorship for graduate women in science, and I think anyone in academia in general. So I conducted a survey of junior faculty and psychiatry residents. I underscored that although most trainees wanted a mentor, most did not have access to one. In my role as McMaster University's Department of Psychiatry Mentorship Program Coordinator, I tirelessly advocated for top-down institutional changes to implement a formal mentoring curriculum. Initially, I co-implemented a formal mentorship training workshop that was made available to all mentors using a train-the-trainer model. Subsequently, I co-piloted a formal mentoring curriculum in 2015 for mentees, including junior faculty, psychology residents, and psychiatry residents. Interested mentor-mentee dyads were randomized to a mentoring curriculum I developed with academic faculty support or to unstructured mentoring to evaluate the effectiveness of the program. With the goal of delivering evidence-informed models, I compiled and administered pre, post, and 6-month follow-up measures and conducted semi-structured interviews with each mentor and mentee to evaluate the outcomes of this program. The success of this program has led to an approximate 33% increase in psychiatry residents with mentors. This program has also positively impacted my determination to mentor trainees to reach their highest potential. My co-supervised honors thesis student was awarded the Best Undergraduate Thesis Award from over 4,000 submissions in the Undergraduate Awards Global Summit. In this experience, I really aspire to provide accessible and effective mentorship for researchers, clinicians, and trainees at a personal and organization-wide level. There's been extremely positive feedback with regards to both the program itself and the idea of just being connected to mentors. And so what I want to really put out there is that these experiences have taught me the importance of mentorship in providing psychosocial support, career-related guidance, and role modeling. Thank you very much.
That was great. Thank you, Chloe. I'm sure we'll definitely have questions for you that you've been actually building the guidelines for this for the department. So thank you. Maria Trinkova from University of California, Davis. Would you like to go, please?
Yes, of course. Let me share my screen. So hello, everybody who is here. So what I want to do is I want to share with you my experience of teaching and mentoring. So I think almost 10 years, hard to believe. Well, it's 8 years of teaching. So I think that I'll talk about teaching mathematics, but you can, I think, translate it to your scientific discipline and it will still be applicable. So teaching mathematics, I think ideally should be done by those who like both students and mathematics. You should be patient about mathematics and you should love your students, but this is an ideal situation. So I think it's quite possible to replace this and with or. So if you either like mathematics or you like teaching students, and I think at my institution, most of the time we have those who are passionate about mathematics and they also do teaching, which is fine. But I think it's very rare when you have someone who likes to teach students, who likes students, who strives to do their best to give them the knowledge and they don't like mathematics. And this was an interesting counterexample that I had someone who hated mathematics, as he told me, but he had many awards in teaching. And so his goal was to explain mathematics in such a way that everybody should understand it. So that was a funny story, I think. And so I try to summarize the key points of my vision, what is important in teaching, and I want to share them with you. So first of all, don't be afraid to say that you don't know something. It's what it should be. Always seek how to expand your knowledge and experience and pedagogy. So it can be done in different ways. You can just talk to your colleagues, talk to experts, increase your experience by teaching more, attend different workshops, or maybe search online for some new ideas, what works, what doesn't work. If you have to teach something that you don't know, then educate yourself in that area. So if you have to teach a subject that is new for you, you need to be an expert in that one. So just not be restricted to a textbook, go a little bit outside of the textbook that you're given. So what I found is very important for students and for myself is to create an atmosphere in the class that helps and nurture the learning process. So if possible, create a welcoming and caring atmosphere. And it can be done in different ways, but I think it's very safe to create this atmosphere if you are clear about your expectations, what students are expected to do from the beginning, so they know ahead of time what they should do, what they should concentrate on, what is more important, what is less important, and then be fair. So you set the expectations and then you follow them. And so the learning process itself has two components. So you perceive information, this is like an external connection with the world, and then internally you process this, and this knowledge becomes part of you. And so in my practice, I think it's very important to have individual homeworks where students can work on the material that they get in lectures, and they kind of process this material, they become connected with it. And another part which is also important is to be able to communicate and use terminology and language of this subject with others. And that's why I am trying, it's not very common in mathematics, but I wish it will be. I'm trying to include group works whenever it's possible. And so, as I said, mathematics is a language, and for this discipline, it's important to teach students that notation is important, terminology, how we use it, and most of all, it's logical thinking. Even we teach mathematics for not math majors, but the way how we think, how we express our ideas using mathematics, we're training our brains. And then be critical to yourself. So the way you teach, collect feedback from students or from others, maybe invite your colleagues to attend your classes, and then see how can you improve. It's always possible to improve, to be better in your teaching, or maybe take one aspect and try to improve that part. And by doing that, you're actually finding your strongest side. So there is no universal way how to teach everybody, because we are, as instructors, we are different. And so something works for one instructor, doesn't work for another instructor. And so find your strongest sides. And if you want to find what's your strongest, don't afraid to experiment. But I want to warn you, be careful, because don't be crazy and just switch from one side to another. So this is my philosophy of teaching, like on one page. And now I want to talk about mentoring. So mentoring, the way how I view, this is my opinion. So mentoring is kind of like parenting. I think it's so much responsibility. And on one side, many people would think that it's helping others, but you are also actually gaining a lot by mentoring. So you grow as an individual through helping others. And so my suggestions how to do mentoring, if you are thinking about doing it. So the first advice that I want to give is you to listen. Listen to the needs of your mentee. What do they need? What are their expectations from these relations? So some people just want to have someone to talk to. Some people really need an advice. Some are very scared about talking to professors. And yeah, so first thing, listen. And then I would suggest don't ask too much, because if you can listen, you can get it, what they want to talk to. And so by not asking too much, I mean, don't ask about, try to avoid asking questions that they don't feel comfortable about talking at the moment. When they'll be ready, they can share it with you. So try to express your interest in listening, that you want to help and you want to support, but don't do harm. And it's always nice to hear others' experience. So as a mentor, you can share your own experience or your observations, experience of others. I didn't have mentors for a long time, and I don't know how I was able to survive, but a few years ago, I got a mentor, and that was awesome. I think I missed a lot, and it's very helpful. But now I'm trying to be a mentor myself. And so atmosphere, again, the same as in teaching, caring and welcoming atmosphere is important. So, and it depends how are you making your relations. If it's over Zoom, it's distance, or if you're on the same campus, same department, then maybe go in for tea, coffee, inviting your mentee. If it's on Zoom, maybe you can have a group of mentees and the mentor, maybe you can play games together. So play by ear. So what are the needs? And stay in touch. It's important because sometimes mentee would approach us, you'll talk, and then they don't feel quite comfortable reaching you. So it's better for a mentor to reach your mentee and say, hey, how are you doing? And just start conversation, and maybe some difficult questions will show up. And so staying in touch can be done in another way. So just forward some information that might be useful to your mentee. So if you hear, for example, so as instructors, we get a lot of emails that about different opportunities, fellowships, research projects, and you just forward this information to your mentee. It doesn't take a lot of time for us, but it means a lot for mentees, and they also receive a message that you are thinking about them, you are wishing to help, they are important. And be careful, that's for me, because as I told you that I'm considering mentoring similar to parenting, and don't make any harm. So these are my ideas. Thank you so much, and I'm here to answer your questions.
That was great, Maria. Thanks. You brought up a good point that you went through times where you didn't have a mentor, and I'm sure some of us have experienced that as well. And of course, when you have a good mentor, that teaches you how to be a better mentor yourself because you're learning. But I know from my experience, when there's been no accessibility to anybody, that also has taught me how to be a better mentor, because I was like, oh, I could have used this. And, it's also something that you don't forget. So thank you for that advice, and for Chloe. So I have two questions, one from the perspective of the mentor, and one from the perspective of the mentee or students, that I'll start with for both of you. That while we're getting questions in the chat, so just while that's going on, I'll start with, because you mentioned, Maria, as a mentor and teacher, of course you need to get feedback, but I'm thinking, academia is a lot of times a culture of criticism. So then we're getting more feedback, like if one of the examples of a student saying on a survey that you talk too fast or you talk too slow, or, these things that we have to be kind to ourselves. So I'll ask for both of you as mentors and teachers, how do you receive that criticism and still be kind to yourself? You don't beat yourself up that you're doing it wrong. It's just, it's another lesson that you're still learning in the way. If either of you can have advice how to receive that to yourself in a kind way.
So Chloe, would you like to go first because you were presenting?
Oh, sure. Well, I think that what's really important is that a lot of times when people are giving feedback, sometimes we say to use the sandwich method, right? The good, the improvement, and then the good again. So I think first of all, whenever we give feedback, sometimes maybe it starts with the person who gives feedback to give it that way. However, on the receiving end, if we don't receive that, maybe it's about that interpretation of the feedback. It's not saying that we're not good enough or that our lectures weren't helpful or that our teaching wasn't helpful. It's just something that would help students in the future. So really taking that feedback and reframing it in a way that's helpful, like you said, Susan, rather than in a way that says that I'm not good enough or to be kind of down on ourselves for that.
Okay, so feedback I think is important, and the way I came to this idea was very painful. So I should share my story that I had my education first in European part when it was not common to get feedback at the end of a quarter. But now when I started teaching in the US, it's kind of part of your duties. At the end of a quarter, you get feedback from your students. And oh my gosh, it was so painful to receive it for the first time. I was not able to digest it. And so luckily, I had a support from my colleagues who explained it to me that, no, it's okay. Everybody's getting it like this. And so, no, you're doing fine. That was important. And then I learned it for myself that, okay, so I have to leave these comments one at a time. And so what I was doing, I was reading one comment for one day and I was digesting it. So what did they want to say? What does it mean? Is it just their emotions that are speaking out in this comment? Is there any truth, and what kind of truth? How can I use this information? So I think this helped me. And then, I don't know, I got used to this comment so much because I see it as a way of improving my teaching. And now it's not enough for me. So I'm doing mid-quarter inquiries. I'm doing surveys. I'm collecting surveys during the quarter. And it's very helpful because if I'm collecting the surveys, it's kind of riding a horse. You can manage, and so you can manipulate, you can choose the direction where you want to go. If something doesn't go well, okay, so now I will change it now. I will not wait until the end of the quarter because it will not help students in my class. I'll get another students next quarter. So I think you have to learn how to accept feedback and how to use it effectively.
Yeah, that makes sense. Excuse me, because as you're saying, take it midterm. It's like taking the temperature in the room to see how it's going. But then also I liked how you mentioned going to colleagues to show them the feedback to make sure, it's not just, students who are upset about their grades or taking it out in different ways, that, if you have your colleagues telling you, these are legitimate, but, they're manageable. If it's something about your teaching technique or your office hours, that I think that's good to get feedback on your level, that will, is a way of, they'll show you how to be kind to yourself because it is legitimate and you're just learning to take it in. But I can imagine it can be overwhelming, as you said in the beginning. So that was from the perspective as a mentor. But then the other question I was thinking from the perspective of mentees and students, what advice, I picture students who lots of times can be shy and also can be thinking, oh, the teacher can be so busy you know, and if they're shy and possibly low self-esteem, which we know women have issues with that, especially, you know, in science, as we're being told sometimes that, you know, we're not as good as the men are. So what advice would you give if there's a student, you know, at the meeting today or going to watch on the YouTube channel that is just a bit shy and thinks maybe they're not important enough to go ask for the professor for help because maybe the professor just looks so busy and is publishing papers, and why would they want to take the time to talk to me? Or, you know, whether it's about homework or actually picking up a mentorship with them. What would you say to those students?
I think the first thing I would say to those students is, number one, maybe try to find a formal mentorship program if that is available. There are a lot of really great free mentorship programs out there that's not just in your institution. For example, I'm a mentor for something called Project Shore, which is widely available. Graduate school mentors are available for you, and it's free to sign up. So certainly it's not limited to your institution. You can look for mentors everywhere, and sometimes someone from a different perspective, not from your institution, you can give a lot more honest feedback and questions about what you're going through day to day. So even looking outside the institution can be very helpful. The other thing I would say is that sometimes with mentorship, it's difficult because sometimes we're prone to ask really generic questions, right? Like, what are the routes to being a successful graduate student? How do I do well in life? You know, these really broad questions are really difficult to answer as a professor, even someone with a lot of great experience. So my suggestion might be to work with a professor one-on-one after class. And I've done this as a second-year undergrad before, going up to a professor after the lecture and said, hey, that was very interesting. Do you have opportunities in your lab? And then going to sort of shadow some of their work and work with their graduate students. And in those ways, you get more specific mentorship, because then you're not just asking generic questions, you're going into the lab, doing something unique, and then asking something specific to that discipline. Like, oh, what do you plan on using this data for? Or what journal would be appropriate for that? You get much more practical advice than asking these very generic questions where you might not get the answers you need.
Okay, so what should I answer? I don't know. I am exactly the person as Susan described. I'm shy. I had a very low self-esteem. That's all about me for many years. And I didn't look for a mentor. Actually, once I went for a meeting where they were doing pairs, mentees with mentor. And I found someone talked to me, also a mathematician, and I shied so much, and I had exactly the same thing. Why would that person bother about me? And I've never called that person. So I told them I forgot their name. So I think it's important to know what is good about you, nurture yourself. And if it's hard for you, if you're too shy, then if you feel like this is a good step, then do it. But it's not good to like doing something that you feel very uncomfortable, then it would hurt. It's not your nature. So try to be honest with yourself. And if you're not a social person, then it's okay to be not a social person. But if you're doing your work, if you're interested in your subject, that will shine out and it will be visible. So as I said, I got a mentor just a few years ago. And so it's after the time when I started mentoring. So I realized that, okay, mentoring is so important, so helpful. And I got mentored after I started mentoring. But people can see you, even if you're shy, others can see you and they can help. And so I received a lot of support from the community. So just don't punish yourself because of that. Yes, it is not an easy task to do. What I think can be helpful is to find a mentor who is not in your discipline, who is not in the same area, because then you're kind of looking at yourself from the position of others, and it's far from your area. And for me, it helped a little bit. So And as I said, when you are mentoring, you're actually understanding more of this process. That's so maybe in the mentoring doesn't mean that you have to wait until you reach some status. You can do mentoring of high school students. And then, so it's kind of two ways. So one way is receiving. It's important to receive the support of a mentor. But another way, which is giving, and this is actually I found more powerful. When you are giving, you are getting so much by giving.
Yeah, I agree that when you're teaching or mentoring, you're actually hearing your own words and you're learning about yourself and how you communicate in your dynamics. And even, for the next time you get that question, you could add on this aspect to it. So I completely appreciate that. And Chloe, I like your suggestion of being, more specific and not so broad. Something I was thinking that you brought to mind was if you're shy to talk to a professor, or even if they're in a different department, go and find one of their most recent papers, their most recent published papers, which I'm sure they'd love to talk about, because who asks them about their research unless they're at a conference? So you can do that, or something I know for myself being shy, something in the chapter, if you're during the semester, if there's something that you just are stuck on in the chapter, that's where you can go to the office hours, or if you're setting up a Zoom, to go in with that specific question about whatever, mechanism or whatever's going on in the lecture. And then perhaps bring it in about, do you have room for mentoring, or, or what opportunities do you have for the lab, as Chloe suggested. So kind of go in with something specific that pertains to the class that you're taking, but then make it a broader conversation while you're there, I think. Now, I see we have a few questions. That's great. And then also, we'll go through a couple, and then Chloe, you had a question for Maria, so I'll have you ask that directly. But Imelda was asking, she's our liaison. Oh, I should also mention GWIS has a mentoring. If you go to the GWIS website, they also have mentoring. They have lots of online lectures, and there's a whole mentoring program within GWIS. So I would be remiss if I didn't mention that during this GWIS chapter meeting, that let's not forget about our organization here that would also have that available. Because Chloe mentioned external mentoring programs outside of your university. So GWIS would be a perfect opportunity for that. And also these chapter meetings, of course. So Imelda, she was asking, what are the barriers or challenges to mentoring? How do cultural differences affect mentor-mentee relationships? And that's specifically for Maria.
So in challenges, well, there are challenges, you're right. And challenges of the way that I experienced is being shy and being afraid to ask what you really need. So you want to talk to one topic, and it's hard to start this conversation, I think. So that's why in my presentation, I mentioned that creating a trusting atmosphere is important. So being honest with your mentee is important. Yeah, because you don't want to talk about something that is very special for you, and yeah, so you want to share it with someone whom you trust. So that's one thing. Cultural difference affect mentor-mentee relationship. I didn't.
I was going to say, Chloe, you can also, when Maria's finished, you can answer as well.
Yeah, so cultural difference, well, I didn't have this experience because I don't know, because my personal story is that I lived in different countries. I have a lot of different experiences. I didn't have this problem. And I've never seen in my mentees. So we were always able to communicate and talk about it. So maybe that was also an important part, where many of my mentees were international students, and I expressed interest. So I asked them, how does it work at your institution? So how does it work in your country? And so after I heard it, I was trying to give advices, and I was sharing my stories. that's probably my answer. So if you want to ask more, then you're welcome.
Well, also, I would say, you brought up a good point. How do you address this in your culture, whatever? But as you mentioned, Maria, going for coffee or doing something more social, if you're doing that with a mentee and there's cultural differences during one of the more social things, you can bring up, whatever is going on, national holidays or different family events or different culture, to bring it into the discussion and perhaps just making it more on a personal level and showing that you're appreciating the difference of culture and wanting to learn about their difference in culture. That might make them feel safer just to talk to you in general, even about strictly work related topics, but it just kind of brings in a safer environment, I would suggest. And Chloe?
Yeah, certainly. So I believe that one of the barriers or challenges to mentorship is that everyone is so different. And that's one of the things we found in our program, in our formalized mentorship program. So how it works is that every session you focus on a different topic. Like one session you might focus on work-life balance. Another one might be how the system works. And this is particular to the hospital. So how the hospital system works, how does promotion work? What is management? So that this is kind of training that you get that you wouldn't otherwise get at the university level, where it's really textbook heavy and about academic publications, but not about what the work actually looks like. But what we found in that program was that the least well-received program was actually the work-life balance program, which is so interesting because we all say, oh, work-life balance is so important. We all need to talk about it more. But I think it's because we're so different. And we really have to, like Maria's slide, I love how listen was capitalized, bolded, exclamation mark. We really have to listen to our mentee because our mentee is different than we are. One of my mentors says, I'm okay answering emails at 12:30 a.m., but a lot of people aren't. So it's important to find out where they're at in order to meet them where they're at. And another thing is that mentees typically don't know what to ask. So maybe as mentors, one of the things we could share is that, well, let's reflect. What do I wish I knew? What are some things that I see day to day with undergraduates or early graduate career students that they actually don't know that they should know? And just kind of keeping a mental note of those and maybe perhaps even just voluntarily sharing that, because as young mentees, we actually just don't know what to ask, and it comes from a good place. Regarding the question about cultural differences, I actually have a mentee who is also of Asian descent, and she has actually shared with me that it's really nice having a mentor who is also of Asian descent, because she recognized that, hey, this is a field that Asian people could also go into in clinical psychology, because the representation is so little in that field when it comes to Asian folks. And so we really got to share some unique experiences and struggles we got to go through as people of Asian descent that otherwise some other people might not understand. And the other thing is that I think there's also that cultural element of, for example, I studied in Switzerland, where the professor was very serious and strict, whereas I also studied in Italy, where the professor was very relaxed. So really recognizing those cultural differences and having an active discussion around that, so that we don't maybe interpret some of those things as maybe insults to ourselves or otherwise. Just really having a broader understanding would be very helpful.
Yeah, and considering this is the international chapter, and as it is, I can see, we have America, we have Canada, we have Nigeria, well, I'm in Ireland. That this is a perfect discussion to be having, because we're all going to be, if we're in this chapter, we're looking to connect internationally. So we're going to have those conversations, or just realize those differences in culture, even in the work environment. Because I know when I worked in France, there's a lot of coffee breaks while your experiments are running, and it's just part of the life there. So that's great advice. Thanks. Now looking, Augusta, she's in our Nigerian subchapter for Maria and Chloe. How would you handle how would a mentor handle a mentee who's not willing to take corrections and grow? And what advice would you give a mentee as regards if having a mentor that's a bully?
So maybe I'll start with the first question. So I don't believe that mentee doesn't want to accept corrections and grow. So what I believe in, that it takes time. So everybody grow and develop individually. So look at your mentee as an individual. So if you're looking at plants, some plants grow so slowly, but they live longer, like we have redwoods or oaks. Some grow really fast and they bloom fast, and yeah, everybody is unique. So I think about myself as I was growing very, very slowly, but I was growing. So I'm able to see these differences. And so sometimes you plant a seed and it will not sprout until next year. Sometimes this period takes a year. Sometimes we'll start growing immediately. So don't think that it's useless. Your job is useless. Maybe you'll see the fruits of your work later. Just be patient. And I'm sure. So like I myself was receiving some suggestions and comments, and it took me a long time to realize that, yes, that's true. And what as a mentor, you don't need to judge your mentee. So that's not our task as a mentor. No judging, just help and support in what they need.
Yeah, I really loved Maria's point about that idea of just supporting the mentee and giving them time to grow. And I think sometimes when we become more experienced in something, we might think that the mentee might be progressing slowly because we actually forgot how long it took for us to learn those things, because we might have been in the field for a long time, whereas it's someone's first month. So sort of having that understanding would be very helpful. And also, I think a lot of times it's a matter of style. I think most people who are in mentor-mentee relationships are very nice, helpful people, and people really do come from a genuine place almost all of the time. I think a lot of the times it's style, because sometimes people have a more directive style. They don't really take shortcuts. They really, how do I say it, in that they give it to you as, you know, as short as possible. Like, don't do that. That doesn't look good. That's never not going to get you published. This is what you should do. And so for us as mentees, we might say, oh my gosh, that's really harsh criticism. But really the mentor might be coming from a very good place. They want you to get published, you know, and they wouldn't say anything to you if they didn't want you to get published. So really communicating about that style. How can we communicate better? And really understanding that people are coming from a good place, and try to find that common ground in terms of communication. And also understanding that sometimes styles just aren't compatible, and that's okay. Maybe take what you need from that person. If they are your supervisor something, or a committee member, take what you can get from them. Don't try to change their style or anything. Find a middle point where you can meet, find that middle path and go from there.
Yeah, and I was also thinking, if the mentee is being difficult, where just not responding or things like that, you know, put the power on them, empower them to ask, what are your goals? You know, and if that's even too difficult, ask them, what are their dreams? What, you know, ask them what are they wanting to get out of not just the mentor relationship, but the field of study that they're in, the field of science that are in, or, you know, STEM that they're in, so that because perhaps that's maybe why they're being difficult, because they're unsure of themselves. So that's where, as a mentor, I think that can be an opportunity to also help them get on a straight path if they're just not focused enough because they haven't had that opportunity yet of being helped with what to do. And then also, if there's a mentor that's a bully, I would suggest that they get a different mentor that just straight away don't, especially as women, should not be dealing with that at all, and find somebody else in the department or outside. And then as far as, lots of times, should you report the person, that lots of times you have to be careful with that and see how it goes. But it should not be accepted at all. So it should be something where that's just not going to be a productive relationship. And that's where they need to speak up for themselves. I was going to say, well, Chloe, do you want to ask your question to Maria?
Yes, absolutely. So my question to Maria is that I love the discussion on mathematics. What I noticed is that a lot of young people say, I am bad at math or I suck at math, which may lead them to stop trying. How can we combat this narrative of I am bad at math for young people? When you work with people one-on-one, how do you work with people through this really difficult narrative of I am bad at math?
Well, first of all, it's okay to be bad at math. That's what my initial point of a conversation, because, well, I'm doing math because I cannot do anything else. I'm good only at math, unfortunately. So I'm so sorry that I'm so bad at English, biology, and other stuff. So don't blame yourself. If maybe it's okay, maybe it's you shouldn't be a mathematician. But then we start another conversation. Why do you think you need math? And so if you think that you do need math, so then how much of math do you need? And so maybe your personal learning skills are important. So the way how you learn it. For example, I told here at GWIS at the previous panels, I had a very bad math teacher. So I'm saying it because I was so bad. I failed math at many exams. I was not performing well, and she tried to convince me that I shouldn't do math professionally. That's not for women. So, but I kind of thought that, well, I don't like anything else besides math. What should I do? I like math. And so I think my parents helped me. My mom said to me, well, so you have your math teacher only at school. After you leave your school, you won't have this math teacher. And so that was very much true. And so after that, that was like an upside down world. And I was actually very good at math, and my teachers praised me a lot, and they helped me to continue my education. So sharing this personal story, I think, is helpful. And then also, it's about your individuality. So how can you learn it? And so what I found, although I'm a mathematician and people think that I like numbers, actually I do hate numbers, and I cannot read anything if there are no pictures. I am very visual, and the only way I can learn something if there are pictures. And algebraic topology, oh my gosh, and I finally recently found a book that has pictures and explains algebra using pictures. So I can say that, yes, I'm also bad at math. It depends on the style, how you learn it. And if you're engaged as an instructor, if you're engaged in it, if you love it, so then it's easier to share your love. And so I'm very proud of this feedback that I received from my students, that my love to math is contagious. So yes, just see everybody as an individual. We are very different. Maybe, unfortunately, your experience was like that, and it made you feel like you're not good at math. But I'm sorry about that, and I'm sure everybody can get it if, first of all, if they want it, if they know how.
Well, and also, Chloe, when you were saying, if you're bad at math, you can fill the blank in any scientific discipline, especially, as women in science. I'm bad in chemistry, biochemistry, physics, because if we just get that caught in our heads. And something I always think, because I didn't always have the best grades, so I did question, do I belong in science? But I know my curiosity was always active. So that's what, even when I did poorly on an exam, I always wanted to go through, and all the questions that I'd gotten wrong is actually learn what the right answers were, and not just by the answer key, like actually looking up, what thought process I got wrong. So I would even suggest, if you think you're bad at something because you're not getting good grades, you're just not getting it fast enough, if your curiosity is there and your interest is there, then perhaps, the fundamentals of being a student, you just have to put in more time, but then that just fuels your interest even more. And I think it'll give you a stronger foundation. So thank you for asking that question, because I think even though it was pointed towards math, I think we can all fill in the blanks of our own our own disciplines here. So we have another question from Imelda, which is good. Where do you draw the line between supervisors and mentors? It is often mixed up in our settings in science, definitely. Supervisors assume that they're also our mentors. So either of you, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think the difference between a supervisor and a mentor is really sort of three things. First is career-related guidance. That person gives you guidance in terms of where your career should take, and really listens to you in terms of what you want out of your career, not what they want out of their career, but what you want, and tailoring that advice to what you want and what you need. The second is kind of providing that psychosocial support that's unique to mentorship. I mean, there are a lot of difficulties like work-life balance that we might have difficulties going to our supervisors for in terms of judgment. And so doing that, but not kind of crossing that barrier of becoming a therapist, because that can also happen, and that we become sort of the wall that they talk to like bounce ideas off of regarding life in general. And sometimes we can step outside of our realms as supervisors, which we don't really want to do. And the third thing is role modeling, really doing things in a way that you can show mentees and younger career scientists how things are done. And I would say, from my personal experience, I would say that my supervisor, my doctoral dissertation supervisor, I defended in May, and we're still very much in touch. And I think what makes him a mentor for me is how caring he is as an individual towards me, and not just my work. He doesn't see me as just a pusher of publications, but he sees me as a person and wants to provide career-related guidance, even though it's not the conventional career he went for. He gives me that psychosocial support when I'm having difficulties, and he's provided that role modeling of what it's like to be a really great mentor. So I think that's where the line is.
Yes, I agree with Chloe that supervisor is related to your discipline and mentor is related to your well-being. And so I think it's great when your supervisor agrees unofficially to take the role of mentor. That's great, but it's not always the case. And so if you are in the situation when you have just a supervisor who is not, who is caring about your professional development, but not your personal development, your emotional feelings and well-being, then seek for a mentor. Because I was at that time when I had just a great supervisor. He was the best supervisor, but I didn't feel comfortable to talk to him about anything else life-related. And that was a hard way to learn the importance of mentors. So mentors are important, because if you're feeling well, you are more productive. You're producing more results, publishing more papers. I don't know what are your measurements. So they are definitely different.
That's an excellent association. Mentoring and mentorship and well-being. So forget about the workload and all that. So I guess to answer, Imelda's question, think, is this person helping me with my overall well-being? And that's where you should be seeking the guidance from, as we've said, possibly even outside the department that you're in directly. So thank you both for the answering those questions and for your statements today. I see we're just about at the hour, so I just want to finish with a poll. So let me launch this. This is just to make sure that everyone was participating in today's event. So this is an anonymous poll, so we can't see how you're voting. So the question is, was today's meeting helpful regarding teaching and mentoring in science? So just the idea, did you learn something today? Did it help you understand whether you're either a mentor or a mentee? And lots of us are in both situations because we never want to give up our mentors, even as we progress. And again, it's anonymous, so we can't see how everyone is voting. So
sorry, Susan, while we are waiting, maybe we can answer. There was one more question from Imelda about judgments and teaching pattern.
Oh yeah, sure.
I can take this question. So the question is, feedbacks are very important in teaching. It can seem a bit judgmental, but it's important that teaching patterns should be adapted to the specific audience. So yes, it's you're right that there should be a pattern that is related to your discipline, but feedbacks can be related to something that is not related to this pattern. And for example, teacher's voice. And teacher's voice can mess up everything, all this pattern. So you're collecting feedback and then analyzing what you can change and what you cannot change. Things that you cannot change, well, you won't change them, right? If you know that the syllabus, you should follow these topics, you cannot change them. Or maybe you could change them, but it's a slow process. You have to go through different steps. But something is very easy to change, like use your microphone, right? And that's it. Or maybe the way how you write, and you have a sloppy writing, we cannot understand your handwriting. Or maybe you are erasing everything too quickly, we cannot copy it. So that's why we are collecting feedback, and then we analyze what we can change, what we should change. But something that is important and shouldn't be changed, then it remains as it is.
Yeah, thank you. So now, everyone has voted, so I'll show the results. So we see that the good news, we've done our job today, that everyone says yes, that today's meeting was helpful regarding the mentoring and also teaching. So I want to thank Chloe in Canada and Maria in USA for going through some personal aspects with us today, sharing your stories with us, but giving us the perspectives of both mentoring and teaching from your perspective as a mentor and teacher, and also students and the mentees and the teachers. So thank you. And I'll stop the recording now.